Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Brian E. Roach and Zach Metkler.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Brian Roach, the host who doesn't like toast and who frequently mocks mock drafting. And as a result, tonight we're going to use what has been a ongoing series I've done over the past 3 years called Mock Draft Insanity, which is for this mock draft, which is what we're going to do in this podcast, is our second mock draft. We're going to set it up so that some crazy stuff has occurred and give the Steelers a plethora of picks. And to help me do this, we have two fine gentlemen who are joining us on the podcast. I'll start with the new guy on the block, at least as far as being on with me, Ryan Lippert. Ryan, welcome aboard.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And accompanying Ryan will be a frequent guest on the podcast, the professor of football himself, Zach Metkler. Zach, how you doing, man?
Just another day in paradise when it comes to the NFL draft, Brian.
Always, yes. So let me reiterate this, that as I go into this, the concept behind mock draft insanity is that it's really just about introducing as many prospects as possible. Under almost no circumstances is anything that I'm about to spin out expected to happen. So for those of you who are frequent listeners, when you jump on board and you go, you know what, this isn't very realistic, that's sort of the point. Because in general terms, mock drafts aren't tremendously realistic. It's a guess. It's everybody's best guess, and quite often they're completely wrong. So that's sort of the point here. Now, here's our scenario. In our second mock draft, first version of Insanity, the Steelers have traded Antonio Brown and their 20th pick to the San Francisco 49ers for the overall number 2 and the Niners' third rounder this year and a 2020 third rounder. So we trade AB plus our first rounder. We get number 2. We get a third rounder from the Niners and a 2020 third rounder. Now, the first part of that scenario is, what do you guys think of that pick or of that trade?
Yes, I mean, I like it. I mean, I've been on the proponent of moving AB in any capacity you possibly can, so I'm all for any type of thing to get some capital for him.
Ryan, what do you think?
I kind of like it. Personally, I hope the AB kind of works something out as far as a lot of Steelers fans kind of feel. But I like the second pick. Obviously, we can get a Bosa or a Josh Allen there, hopefully. And then you said a future first round?
Future third. A future third and a third this year.
Yeah, so that's good as well. It helps with that depth. So, like Zach said, getting something back for AB, that's probably the best scenario we could probably get for AB at this point.
All right, so that's where it starts. However, as the Steelers go on the clock at number 2, they trade with the Bills for the number 9 pick. In other words, they're trading back. They're now going to be at 9. They also get the Bills pick in the second, which is the 7th pick. Their third pick in the third, which is the 11th pick in the third, and their 4th, and next year's first rounder. So we trade back. We allow the Bills to move up essentially 7 slots, and we get a plethora of picks. That'll never happen, but then again, the Bills have done crazy crap like this before. If that were to occur, I would be joyous. I can live with missing out on Nick Bosa and Josh Allen and everybody else who's going to go in the top 9 or the top 8 if I'm getting essentially 5 additional picks, plus one of them is a first rounder. What do you guys think? We'll start with you, Ryan.
I like it. Like you said, we get a lot of picks, and picking still in the top 10, we can still get a high-quality guy that can come in and probably start as a rookie.
Zach?
Anytime you can pick up more picks later on, especially in a draft like this, where there's a lot of questions, so to speak, when you kind of get to some of that elite talent, especially with the Steelers' needs, I'm all for acquiring any type of talent you can later on down the road.
Excellent. So, tra-la-la-la-la, The draft moves on. We're at number 9. We're on the board, and guess what we do again? We move back. We move back to 16. We trade with the Panthers, and we get the Panthers' 16th pick, their 5th round pick, and 2020 second and third rounders for moving back another 7 spots. So now we're at 16. Out of the top 15, but we're loaded up already for next year, and we've got a herd of picks for this year. Zach?
Keep them coming. Keep them coming. The more the merrier. You know, if this is what Mike Mayock feels like whenever he has a plethora of picks, I mean, I like this feeling.
Ryan?
Honestly, at this point, from 9 to 16, you know, it's 7 picks. It's not going to do as much harm. Plus, like we said, keep the picks coming. Next year's draft class should be deep with talent, so it's good to stack up picks now while we can.
All right. And in that philosophy, we're not done yet. Yes, this is indeed mock draft insanity. The Steelers trade back again with the Seahawks for pick 21 and their future second and thirds. So we're sitting at 21, but here's what we have now. We have the 21st pick in the draft. In the second round, we have 9 and 20. In the third, we have 3, 7, and 19. In the fourth, we have 11 and 20. In the fifth, we have 16. In the sixth, we have 2 and 19, and in the seventh, we have the 5th pick. Plus, we've picked up the Bills' first-round pick in 2020, the Panthers' second and third, the Niners' third, the Panthers' second and third, the Seahawks' second and third. We now have a lovely slew of picks, and I'm not that upset about it. We end up 1 pick behind where we would have picked at 20, but with a boatload of stuff. And we lose AB. Are we going to complain about this?
I like stuff. I like the idea of AB going. I know we've had this conversation before, Brian, but at some point in time, AB is going to have to be a situation where the Steelers either accept it and keep him. I'm more on the side. I think they're going to end up trying to move him, especially as time goes along. We keep seeing these media antics. Any type of capital you can get that's not lowballing yourself is good. And the Steelers, I think, do that well in the situation while also getting some pretty capital.
Ryan, what do you think? How do we do with if all this were to transpire? What would you be doing?
Well, I mean, AB is a tough talent to lose, but like we said, I like the capital. Honestly, I like the most out of this trade. I like the 5 picks between the second and third this year. That's huge. We can get a lot of talent within that range. And I like the Bills first for next year. You know, the Bills haven't been too hot lately, as we all know. So that pick could be in the top 15 again next year. So that's something to look forward to as well.
Yeah, I'd be dancing a jig, and I think if this much action went on in the first round, it would be, well, you know, look, the people would start to say that you know, Kevin Colbert was being played by Kevin Costner. So anyway, we're at the point where we're actually going to start picking. So at the 21st pick in the draft, Ryan, who do you have the Steelers picking up?
And the guy I'm all in on right now is Byron Murphy, cornerback out of Washington. I believe he's the second corner available in this draft behind Greedy Williams. He could jump above Greedy. You know, I think he's a very talented, smart corner. He's great in coverage, can come up and support in the run. I'm taking him with this pick because the guy I really want, I'm really hoping for, Devin White, linebacker at LSU. I don't think there's any chance he falls to us at 21. So I'm taking Byron Murphy right here.
All right, a lot of us picked Byron Murphy in the first round in the last draft, and that's cool because I think I know Zach loves him or likes him a lot. I like him a lot. I think that you're not going to get any complaints from either me or Zach there, right?
No, not at all.
All right, Zach. What in your version of this mock, who do you have them taking at 21?
Well, seeing as this is a dream scenario, I'm going with my dream pick in this case. If the guy were to fall there, I'm not as sold on him as some of the draft pundits are. But Devin White, inside linebacker of LSU, I know I've kind of been begrudged with him over the time because I don't think he's as perfect as a prospect as people make him seem out to be. But I think if he's there on the board at 21 in this case, it's a no-brain pick regardless of who else is on the board because it fills a huge position need for you. And in my opinion, I think linebacker is a bigger need than cornerbacks. I think the talent is in that secondary to produce. But if you can shore up that front seven and get a guy like Devin White who has the highest ceiling of any linebacker in this class, but I also feel he has a low floor, but he has all-pro potential. He has perennial Pro Bowl potential. If he falls to 21 there, put him next to Vince Williams in the middle of that linebacking core, get some guidance from John Bostic, he could be a stud for years to come for Pittsburgh.
Now, I'll tell you that when I do these, right, when we set these scenario ups, I actually do mock drafts on Fanspeak using their mock draft engine. And I'll do it 3 or 4 times and then try and get a consensus because I'll use 3 or 4 of their different big boards. And so in every big board that I have, or in every mock draft I did preparing for this, Byron Murphy was gone. Otherwise, at 21, I probably would have taken Byron Murphy. But in 3 out of the 5 that I did, the dream scenario you just mentioned occurred, and Devin White was still there, and I picked him. So I have him at 21 as well, even though much the same as you just said. I'm not 100% sold on him. I have concerns about some of his getting washed away with size and getting lost in the shuffle sometimes, but there's no question that he's a very fast, athletic linebacker, and there's possibilities there. So at 21, I'm willing to take the risk because the cornerback that I wanted is gone, and because I've got so many extra picks, I've got a chance to make up for it if it's a problem. So in this instance, I'm with you. All right, so that gets us through the first round. No more craziness occurs, and we are now in the second round, and the Steelers are on the board at number 9 in the second round. And I will start this one off, and I will tell you that in 3 of the 4 mocks that I did, or 3 of the 5 mocks that I did, I got a lot of requests for trading. At this point, again, people wanted to trade up at 9, and the reason will be because of who was still there, and I didn't do it, although primarily because I only wanted future draft picks, and they only wanted to give me like every other draft pick in their draft for this year, and I didn't want that. So I also wanted the player I picked because, again, I think this is highly unlikely. I don't think there's any way that this player falls out of the first round, but you never know. And in this instance, it's DK Metcalf, the wide receiver, falls all the way to number 9 in the second. And that's who I grabbed because, hey, we just got rid of AB. And the more film I watch on Metcalf, the more I like him. And the more I think Ben will be salivating at having this big target there. So that was my grab. We'll just go in reverse order. Zach, what did you do this time?
So I went with kind of a luxury pick. I figured the Steelers have this much draft capital, they might as well spend it and, go BPA. And if the guy that I'm going to name here is still available, I think is kind of a no-brain scenario, and that's Noah Fant, tight end out of Iowa. He, in my opinion, has probably the second highest upside. I think he's the most NFL-ready tight end in this class. And I think him and TJ Hawkinson are going to be 1 and 2, no matter how you look at it. I think they both present a much higher ceiling than Irv Smith from Alabama does. I just think Noah Fant has the potential. He has the size. He has the athleticism. He has the catching ability. He needs to improve a little bit as a run blocker, but to be fair, most tight ends coming out in today's NFL do. I think when you see what he can do in space, what he can do with the ball in his hands, he'd be a fantastic asset. You don't have to rush him right into it. He could sit behind Vance McDonald, get a lot of looks as a pure receiver while he develops his aspects as a run blocker, and then maybe by year 3, year 2, become the guy the Steelers have needed at tight end really since Heath Miller's retirement.
All right, let me ask you a question. If Metcalf and Fant are there, where do you go?
Metcalf.
Okay.
Metcalf, he's my wide receiver 1. He's my guy. So I go him over.
Fair enough.
Yes.
All right, Ryan, what did you end up doing at 9?
Since I already took the corner, our next need obviously is at the inside linebacker spot. So I took Mack Wilson, linebacker of Alabama. I don't think he's going to quite be in the first round range. Somebody may, take a risk with him there, but I think he's good enough to be an early second rounder there. I think he's very aggressive in the running game. I like his potential. I think he can learn from guys like Vince Williams and John Bostic, kind of be the guy of the future with the Steelers that they need in that defense.
All right. I don't hate it, especially because it's in the second round.
Yes.
A lot of mocks have drafted him in the first of the Steelers, and I don't like it there at all. But I won't complain in the second round, especially because A, we got another pick in the second round, and B, we have a million other picks. So, all right, let's start with Zach this time around. Zach, we're now at 20. And which direction did you go at 20?
I'm going to continue to beat the dead horse that I probably will be doing throughout the entire process of this draft. I'm going with Amani Oruwariye out of Penn State, cornerback. I just think the pick in the second round, if he's there, makes way too much sense for the Steelers to pass up. I think Oruwariye is probably the most well-rounded cornerback. I think team versatile cornerbacks. You can press him, you can play him back in zone, you can play him in man. He has the ball skills. He has the coachability, which I think is a huge thing for him. And he also has the ability to trust his technique, which is something we've seen Artie Burns struggle with so far in the NFL. He always seems to be second-guessing himself or just not trusting what's being told of him. I think Oruwariye presents an upgrade at the position. You could very easily plug him in there early on in his rookie season, opposite of Joe Hayden. And by the time Joe Hayden leaves, he could be your lockdown number one corner. And I think he would match up very well with the league's ex-receivers.
All right, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. You've sold me on him. Look, I'm a Buckeye. I can't be watching a bunch of Penn State guys. It'll annoy me. So, but you've sold me on him over the last few months, and I think I picked him last time around, but I can't remember. Ryan, who did you pick at 20 in the second?
With AB gone, I think we need to look at the wide receiver position. A guy I really like, and I think he's going to rise up a couple boards, is Deebo Samuel out of South Carolina. I think he tore it up in the Senior Bowl at practices from all the videos and stuff I saw from other scouts on Twitter. He's a very polished route runner. He's very firm in his routes, and I believe he'd be a great threat in the deep game as well as in the return game. He can give us something on special teams, kind of be alongside Ryan Switzer in that regard. So I think this is a great pick for us, and I think he'd be possibly a number 3 option behind Juju and James Washington if we were to pick him here.
I'm still at a point in my life where anyone with the name Debo is not somebody I'm liking at the moment. But when I take that out of context, I can't disagree with your logic in the sense of they're going to need a wide receiver at some point in this draft if they in fact do part ways with Antonio Brown. So I don't argue with your pick. Zach, what do you think?
I like that a lot. Deebo Samuel's a guy that's kind of risen on my board. He is 6 foot, so he's not going to completely wow you with the height, but he does present a nice mismatch. He does a really good job at high pointing the ball. He plays so fast when you watch him. He had a really good week at the senior week. Senior Bowl too. So I like what he presents to the table. I think in the right offense, which the Pittsburgh, if there's any team you want to go to as a wide receiver, Pittsburgh's the one that you want to go to. I think he would present a really nice pairing with Juju on the outside.
Nice. Okay. So I went a different direction since I've already got a wide receiver in DJ Metcalf, and I have not picked up a cornerback yet, and because I picked the Penn State kid last time, and because I have gotten the kernel in my ear, the ear worm of the the cornerback from Kentucky, because of how well he performed at the Senior Bowl stuff, Lonnie Joseph. So I picked Lonnie Joseph at 20. What do you guys think?
I know Ryan's going to like it, but I also I'm a big fan of Lonnie Johnson. I think he's not quite there with his game. I think he is a guy that could ease into the role, but I think the ceiling's a mile high for him. I'm excited to see what he can do in the NFL.
Obviously, I like it. Being from Lexington, seeing him play at Kentucky, he was a great player in college. Like Zach said, though, it might take a little bit of time. He's starting to get better. He's starting to impress. That's why he's rising up boards. But he has a great amount of potential, big corner. So I like him at that pick.
Yeah, it was the big is what sold me. Even though I screwed up his name and called him Lonnie Joseph, it's Lonnie Johnson. And I do like I like the size. And even though I have been constantly stating the mantra of I don't want potential guys. I want complete guys. I eased off a little bit because I had to pick somebody, and I got a lot of picks left. So, and I like what I've seen in the snippets and the highlights that have been showing up. That ends the second round. So it's the third round, and we have 3 picks in the third round for the Steelers: the 3rd, the 7th, and the 19th. And we'll start with Ryan. Ryan, who do you have at pick 3 in the third round for your Pittsburgh Steelers?
I'm going with another need that a lot of people think we have on the Steelers, and that's edge rusher. I've got Jalen Ferguson of Louisiana Tech. I like him as a small school guy. He's a bigger guy. He's physical. He uses his hands very well. He needs to work on his flexibility a little bit, but I think he's a project player as well. I think he still sits behind Bud Dupree and T.J. Watt, but he provides as somebody to be a rotational player. And if things don't work out with Bud this season, if we bring him back, he steps into the spotlight and he could be a good player for us.
All right. Zach, who do you pick at 3 in the third?
I went with a different route here that I normally have, especially this early, but I figured the value would be great if he's still there to prevent the Steelers from help on the back end of their defense. But I went with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, safety out of Florida. He's kind of, in my opinion, of a really traditional free safety, but I think he can kind of be moved around a lot of different spots on that defense. He has the opportunity to potentially play some cornerback if he comes down to the slot and the nickel packages and whatnot. My main issue with him and why I think he is going to fall a little bit is he's very inconsistent at this point in time. But as a third-round pick at a position that's not the most glaring need for the Steelers, it could potentially give them another opportunity to kind of reevaluate the free safety spot if they don't feel in a couple of years Sean Davis is going to be their guy. I think he will be, but it doesn't hurt to have some high-value depth for a guy that can kind of be a multifaceted back-end guy in your back end, whichever. I think Gardner Johnson fits that profile.
All right, I don't have any complaints with that at all. Look, if nothing else, it's depth, right? I went where at some point I think in every mock draft I've just liked this kid, so I think that there's a good chance I'm going to pick him all the time somehow, some way. I picked him last time in the second. In this draft, he fell to the third, and that's Voshan Joseph, the Florida linebacker, who I still like. And while he has some issues, I think he has some potential that looks good. So I pulled him in third. I feel like it's even a better value because last time I picked him in the second. So any complaints with anyone on these third round picks at the third pick?
Not at all.
Nope, not for me.
All right, so now we're at pick 7. And I will start us off, and for no better reason than I think it became a point when I was doing these where I just started going, at this point I've gotten everything I could possibly want, and now I'm just taking whoever I think is the best player available or who the boards say is the best player available on as I'm going through. So as a result, not out of need, although I think that we have at least a small need, I ended up taking, with the 7th pick in the third round, Damian Harris, a running back out of Alabama. Even though the Steelers almost never draft anybody from Alabama, and it's probably unlikely they go there, he was the best running back still sitting on the board per Matt Miller's board, and so I took him. What do you guys think? Ryan?
I'm not mad at it. He's a good running back. He provides us. He'd be third on the depth chart, but, things happen. We could have injuries as we've seen before. He's a player that could definitely step in and help us out if we needed him.
All right, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Damian Harris, but I think, he's in the right position and the right usage, he'll be a valuable running back. I don't think he's ever going to have starter potential, but in the scenario that the Steelers are here, they don't need a starter because of the fact that they have, James Conner, they have Jalen Samuels. So they could have a guy like Damian Harris in a situation where he's not going to be pressing the time. He can learn the ropes of the NFL and maybe become a very valuable number 2 running back down the road if they decide to move Jalen Samuels around in a different position. So I don't like Harris, but it makes sense to have the Steelers where he doesn't have to be the bell cow back.
Yeah, and that's the only reason I went here. I agree with you 100% I don't think he's ever a starter. I'm not, but I think that he has the capacity to be a solid second, a number 2 back, and I think he could be that for them. So, okay, so that was my 7th. Zach, who did you end up picking at number 7 in the 3rd?
So again, it's a dream scenario. So I'm going with my dream pick if he's still there on the board and the Steelers have the opportunity to snag him. I went with Chris Lindstrom, guard out of Boston College. Right now, he is my top-rated interior offensive lineman in what is otherwise a very lackluster, we'll call it. I'll try to be nice. Offensive line class. I'm not impressed by a lot of the offensive linemen here, but I just think when you look at Lindstrom play, there's not a whole lot you look at and you're like, well, that's not good. That's not good. I think with the way the Steelers have developed their offensive lineman, he could very easily step into in year 1, year 2, that left guard spot, depending on what the Steelers decide to do with Ramon Foster. At worst, he's a rotational switch guy who can play left or right side in a pinch if you need him to. And at best, he's able to be your year 1 starter and kind of ease on the years after Ramon Foster. I just think he has the great size. He has the great movement. He has great hand placement. He is great one-on-one, and I think he has the vision you want to see in a lineman to be able to play his own scheme like the Steelers do. So I love him if he's still there on the board in the 3rd round.
All right. I'm never going to yell at you for an offensive line pick. Ryan, who did you pick at number 7 in the 3rd?
Well, Zach actually took my pick with his last one. I had Chauncey Gardner-Johnson here, safety out of Florida. Like Zach said, I really like his ability to both play free safety and corner. So we could possibly use him in the nickel situation. But as he said, he's going to be a depth player. He's not going to have to start right away. But he's a player that potentially could take that starting spot if Sean Davis doesn't show up in the next couple of years.
All right. I'm not mad at it. So now we're at 19. This is our last pick in the 3rd round. Zach, you start us off. Who'd you take at 19 in the 3rd?
Yeah, I went with a situation I don't think it's going to happen, but we've already mentioned him, Lonnie Johnson out of Kentucky. I think he fits the profile what the Steelers are looking for in a cornerback. I like him a lot. I think the Senior Bowl really helped his stock, so I don't think he's going to be there at 319. But as we currently stand, before we see the combine, before we see pro days, before we see anything else, I still think he has mid-day two value. I think ultimately that's going to end up changing. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he sneaks into the 1st round. I just think he has the physique for it. He has the skills for it. He has the raw potential for it. And at this point in the draft, you take a guy like him who has the upside of a Pro Bowl caliber cornerback in the 3rd round. So if he ends up being a bust and he ends up not being anything more than Artie Burns 2.0, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, I have no complaints. Why would I? All right, Ryan, who did you take at 19?
I went an offensive line here. I took Ross Pierschbacher. I think that's how you pronounce it, out of Alabama, interior offensive lineman. I just really like his size and frame a lot. He's not very gifted athletically, so he's going to have to work on some things to kind of learn from the veterans, but he could be a solid player for us in the future there.
All right. I took, again, this is going completely off of what was available. I'm sticking to the BPA concept. In 3 out of 5 drafts, I ended up taking Mike Edwards, strong safety out of Kentucky. There are some things I don't like about him. I think he's a little small. I think he's a little stiff, but I also think he has decent ball skills and he's physical. I don't know that I ever project him as a starter, but again, I think he can contribute on special teams. He could maybe slide in as a nickel backer if needed, just because of his physicality. And he was there, so I took him.
Good enough explanation for me.
All right. That ends our 3rd, and now we've got 2 picks in the 4th. Ryan, why don't you start us off with the 11th pick in the 4th round? The Steelers are on the board.
I took a guy. He's just going to be a depth guy for us at this point. Iman Marshall, cornerback at USC. He's got good ball skills, good quickness. He's got some potential, but again, he's going to be one of those players that kind of sits behind. If we bring in Murphy, he's going to sit behind him. He'll be a rotational guy, but you never know. He could step up eventually and be a player for us.
All right. Zach.
Yeah, so I went with a guy that I think will get more talk about as the entire process goes along. He's not getting looked at a whole lot right now. I think it's more so just due to the fact that the raw potential is there. But I went with Anton Wesley out of Texas Tech, receiver. If you watch him play, he looks like a string being out there. I mean, the guy's 6'5", 200 pounds, and he just doesn't have the filled-out frame you'd like to see from a guy. But, I mean, for a guy that's 6'5", he has moves that a guy that size shouldn't have, and I think it's really kind of tantalizing for a team that wants to look at it. You know, I think route running's there. I think the speed and the burst is not always elite, but you don't always see that for guys that are his size. And I think there's flashes where you see him do extremely well. There's flashes where he kind of takes the time off. But I think when you look at the entire package and the potential that's there, I don't know if he'll ever be elite. But I just think that he's the type of guy you take at this point in the draft. I don't think he's going to come in day one and replace AB. So that might be a detriment to some people because I waited a little bit to take a wide receiver. But I think he has upside. And I think the fact that he has been on numerous occasions remarked as being a great teammate, I think you kind of get the polar opposite. I'm not saying AB's not a great teammate before I put a little asterisk next to it. But you get a guy that's been beloved by his teammates. He's always a hard worker. And I think he's going to put the work in to become a quality NFL receiver. And one day it's the Steelers. So if there's any team who put money on to develop a receiver, it's them. I think Wesley could be that guy down the road.
So he's a slow Martavis.
He's a slower Martinez. Slower Martinez.
As soon as you said gangly, I'm just thinking of the baby giraffe running on the field, and I'm like, oh, he's a slow Martinez. All right.
You get the opportunity to watch some tape on him. I mean, that's the first thing you'll notice, no matter what else. He can make a one-handed grab, and that's going to be the first thing you notice is his build.
All right. Well, I think I took this same guy in the 4th round last time around. I'm going to take him every mock draft in the 4th round if he's still there, if he hasn't started moving up boards, just because I watched him all year long in every game that he played. And that's Terry McLaurin, the wide receiver from Ohio State. I really like the way that he deals with combat catches. He's aggressive. He has great hands, and I feel like he's physical and would be a steal. He's not speedy, but he has speed. He has the ability to find ways to get open, and even when he's covered, he makes combat catches that you just kind of go, all right, great. So I like Terry McLaurin. Next time I'm just going to say Terry McLaurin, and I'm not even going to talk about him. But I continue to like him as a prospect, and I think that he could still be around in the 4th round. So I would grab him here. And that takes us to 20. All right, Zach, you start us off this time. 20 in the 4th.
Now, while I don't think the Steelers will take a running back in the draft, just because I like the idea of adding a veteran into that running back room, so you don't have 3 guys all under the age of 24. I went with Rodney Anderson, running back out of Oklahoma. I think he is kind of a poor man's Le'Veon Bell. He's an extremely poor man's Le'Veon Bell. Poor man's Joe Mixon. I think he's more on the level of what we saw from Kalen Ballage last year coming out of Arizona State. I think he has that kind of one hit kind of go type of thing. He has the vision to be patient and wait for things. I call him a poor man's version of those players because I don't think he's ever going to be necessarily a every down back, but I think in the right system, and I think he would kind of give the Steelers the opportunity to see what he could do. You know what you have in James Conner at this point in time. You start to see glimpses what you have in Jalen Samuels. Adding a player his caliber maybe could be a surprise and give you, a 3-headed monster in that backfield. He has the size, he has the vision, he has the raw potential to be a decent running back. I don't think he's a top-tier running back by any means, but he's a guy that I've liked. I think he's a plus receiver as well. So I think depending on if he's there, he would be interesting to take. But again, dream scenario. Don't think it happens, but why not?
All right. I ain't gonna be mad. Ryan, what did you do, my friend?
I went with the former last chance you got here, Dakota Allen, linebacker of Texas Tech. I just think he's a very smart linebacker. He's very good against the run. He sometimes struggles to get off blocks at times and can work on his coverage a little bit. But again, he's a guy that can kind of sit behind and learn and maybe be somebody that can contribute in the future.
All right. I'm not hating it. All right. So at 20, is that what we're doing? Are we doing 20 right now?
Yes.
I'm so completely lost. There's too many picks. It gets confusing for me. All right. So at 20 in this, because I hadn't picked an offensive lineman, and I'm going to be upfront and say I don't know anything about this guy, but he was the best guard that was left on my board. I took Ryan Bates from Penn State. And Zach, tell me why I made a mistake or didn't.
I mean, he's a different type of lineman than Connor McGovern. McGovern's going to be the guy that probably gets the most type of attention. That's not to say that Bates isn't good. I do like Bates, but again, as I've said numerous times with a lot of people in this class, I'm not not that high on the interior offensive line. But I think realistically, he has a spot in the league. I think he's a developmental guy that can come down the road and potentially give you something. I don't know if he would become the heir apparent then at that point to Ramon Foster, but we've seen the Steelers make nothing or something out of nothing. So, he could be a guy that we see down the road filling in somewhere on that line.
All right. Ryan, you have any thoughts on this pick since I have none?
I have no clue about that guy, and be completely honest with you.
Yes, I was relying on the professor for that one. All right. So, in reality, the Steelers do not have a fifth-round pick, but because of our insane trades, we do. So, at 16 in the fifth round, I'm going to start this one. I took from Texas A&M the defensive lineman Daylon Mack, and when I watch him, he's not a huge guy. I mean, he's a big guy. He's not a tall guy. And I look at him kind of as a Jay Wobble kind of guy. He has, what impresses me is his burst. He can get off the ball, and while he has some downside as well, and he's going to need to develop. That burst could serve him well as an interior rusher, and I think one of the things we learned this year is interior line defensive linemen who can get pressure cause problems in the league. So I like him not as a potential, really even a potential starter, but as solid depth on the defensive line. So that's why I went with Daylon Mack from Texas A&M. So Ryan, your turn.
Well, since we got rid of AB and we have all these picks, I figured I'd go with 2 wide receivers in this draft. So I'm going with the guy I really like, David Sills out of West Virginia. He's a tall, fast wide receiver, great as a deep threat, and in the red zone, he has a great ability to high point the ball. And I see, when I watch film on him, I see a little bit of a flash of Mike Evans in him. So I really like that pick right there in the 5th round.
Yeah, I think that's a solid comp because he's not going to wow you with his athleticism, but when you watch him go downfield, he somehow makes it work. So it's interesting to watch, and I think that Mike Evans, talent-wise, might not be the comparison, but when it comes to stylistic points, I think that's a really good comp.
All right, Zach, since you're the only one left, you go.
Yeah, I also went receiver here. I'm going with the guy that I just did in my newly released mock draft that Steelers Underground. I went with Jalen Hurd. He's a guy that I doubt the Steelers will ever show any type of interest in, but if they ever went with him, I'd be enamored because of the fact that he's a converted running back who plays like a running back, but is athletic enough to play receiver. And I think when you watch him out there, he's 6'4", 230, 220. He just seems bigger than everybody else, but he has the vision and the balance of a running back. Baylor didn't ask a whole lot of him when it came to a different type of route running, but when you watch him do certain things, I mean, he's able to stick the foot in the ground, make a guy miss. He has great hands, great focus, great work ethic, and I think that's the type of guy. Again, you pair him with Anton Wesley, who I picked in the 4th round. He gives you 2 6'4" plus receivers with both potential red zone threats. I'm envisioning a situation where you're putting a 6'4" guy on the right, a 6'5" guy on the left. You put Juju at 6'1" in the middle, and the slot is an oversized slot guy, and James Washington fill in wherever you want to fill him. To me, that's incredible down the road. I think Hurd has a high ceiling. I think he gives you some versatility. I think his floor is at minimum a depth receiver, but I think his ceiling is a starter in the NFL.
Nice. All right, and we're getting down to the bottom of the draft. We're in the 6th round. We have the 2nd pick. Zach, why don't you go again and start us off?
So I went with another Jalen with this pick. I went with Jalen Jelks, an edge rusher out of Oregon. He is the definition of a developmental guy. He is not quite there at this point. He has decent size. He's 6'5", going to probably run around 250. But when you see it, like there's flashes where he does extraordinarily well, but you can tell he's kind of just going with it. You know, it's not that he doesn't have the ability to do the things properly, like use proper hands, chop down on offensive linemen trying to attack him, dip around properly, dip the shoulder, rip underneath. It's just the fact that he hasn't really been coached the finer points of how to do that on a consistent basis. And that's why I think a guy like him falls a little bit more, because you see the athletic traits. I mean, he's quick off the ball. When he goes and you ask him to do something, he does it for you. He has a strong body. You know, he is able to carry his weight extraordinarily well, but you need to see him do more from a technique standpoint. And I think an underrated move for the Steelers this year is having Keith Butler be the outside linebacker coach again. People seem to forget that he flourished in that role in the days of past with the Steelers. I think he can get the best out of a guy like Jelks, who can sit a year behind Bud Dupree and then maybe take some steps in the years forward. I think he's a higher rated version of what the Steelers tried to get out of Anthony Chicklow a couple years back in the 6th round.
All right. Ryan, who did you pick at number 2 in the 6th?
I'm kind of a homer with this pick. I picked a guy of Kentucky here, tight end C.J. Conrad. He was kind of a guy in the preseason. He was kind of talked about at the tight end position a lot by scouts, but it kind of fell off a little bit with other guys rising above him. I think he's a very good blocker, nice size, good in the red zone and short yard situations. He's not going to wow you with his speed, but at Kentucky he did show a little bit of a threat vertically, so sit behind Vance McDonald and learn a little bit. Maybe he can be a number 2 guy in the future.
All right. I went back to the defensive line and took a guy who, much as Zach just said, I think is strictly a developmental guy. And the reason I took him is normally I get in drafts past, I get very stuck on fit. And the thing with the Steelers right now is I think everything fits. I've changed my tune because they play so much sub package. I don't think that they have to be limited to guys who are, you know, traditional Cam Hayward type, Aaron Smith types ends that you'd see in their normal base defense. But they can now broaden that scope and look at guys who would, you know, operate in those different fronts where they've got 4 down linemen as opposed to just the 3. And I went with Amani Bledsoe out of Oklahoma, who's a defensive end. I don't know exactly how he's going to play out. He's a little undersized. He's 6'4", like 270, something like that. But he was the top-rated guy left on the board. So I looked him up, and I didn't see anything that made me go, 6th-round pick, I shouldn't take him. So I did. Guys got any thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, the size is a concern for me, especially. But, like, you know, you look at the Steelers' fronts, you know, they have 2 down linemen, they have 1 down lineman, they have 5 down linemen. I mean, they can find a spot for him if they really like him enough. And we've seen them bring in guys towards the ends of drafts or free agent periods and whatnot where they're even more undersized and they still make them work. So I think Bledsoe, if they like him enough, they can find a spot for him to go in there.
How about you, Ryan? Any thoughts?
See, I'm like you on there. I really don't know much about him, but if he was high on the board there, you know, he's a good pick with as many picks as we have.
Yeah, well, and when you're in the 6th round, it's like throwing darts at the board anyway. You might find an Antonio Brown, and you might not. So, all right. So that brings us to the 19th pick in the 6th round, and I went with a offensive lineman, a offensive tackle, just because I figured why not take an offensive tackle. He's in the Big Ten. He plays for Rutgers, and his name is Tariq Cole. He's big. It's late in the draft. I have a hard time taking anybody from Rutgers because they weren't very good. But, you know, here's a guy. I guess I look at him and I look at the size and the body type and maybe he can get past some of his limitations where, you know, he's a little tight in his lower body. He doesn't do great with depth, but, you know, on pass blocking, but, you know, with the right coaching, maybe he can develop into a solid depth player. I don't expect anything more from him. But then again, when you're talking about drafting in the 6th and 7th rounds, I don't know that you're definitely expecting anything more from these guys than that anyway. So that was my pick as the second pick in the 6th. Zach, any commentary? And if not, you can just go right ahead and give us yours.
No, I agree with you. It's kind of hit and miss at this point in time. So I went with a guy who there's no harm, no foul in taking, and I'm only going with him because there was reports, and this means absolutely nothing, but there were reports of Kevin Colbert going out of his way to talk with this young man at the East-West Shrine game. Again, means nothing at this point in time, but why not? So I went with B.J. Blunt, inside linebacker out of McNeese State. He was kind of the star of the show from the Shrine game this year. He found a way to get around the ball. I mean, you saw his athleticism. He kind of fits that Shazier mold, not talent-wise, but just, he's 6'1", 220, constantly flying around, always seeming to find a hand on the ball. He's making tackle after tackle. He did the same thing in college, and I think him going to the Shrine game and being able to flourish on that stage makes him the kind of perfect small school prospect. And again, not saying it means anything, because it doesn't, but, the time to go out of his way as a GM to talk to a player at a Shrine game like that during the practices, I think speaks volumes, at least of the caliber of player that he can be in the NFL, or that coaches are going to take interest in him. So if he's there in the 6th round, I don't really have a feel on his draft position right now, because I think he can go 5th round, he can go undrafted. But with all these picks, why not?
Sure, why not? Ryan, what'd you do?
I went running back here. Went Mike Weber. OSU.
Go Bucks!
I knew you'd like that one. He came on strong as a freshman, kind of lit it up, but fell off a little bit in production in the last 2 years. But, he's a player. He has decent vision, good quickness. He'd come in, be a number 3 guy. Again, with our running backs, probably won't contribute, but stuff can happen, He'd come in and be maybe a running back 2 for somebody gets hurt. Who knows?
I'm never going to argue with an Ohio State pick, and I took him in the 4th round last time around. So in the 6th, man, I think that's a steal in my opinion. All right, we got one left, guys. Wow, we made it through the incredibly long draft that we created with this insane scenario. So we'll start off, Ryan. We'll start back with you. With the 5th pick in the 7th round, the last pick of this draft, who are the Steelers taking?
I went D-line here. I saw Zach picked him in his mock that he posted earlier. I really liked the pick. Just for a 7th rounder, Dontavius Russell, D-lineman out of Auburn. He's not very polished. He's just a thicker frame. Maybe put him in goal line situations if he makes the roster. Besides that, probably won't play much, but he adds depth and maybe a guy on practice squad that can maybe work his way up if he progresses.
All right. I'm guessing Zach's not going to complain much since he picked him in his mock. But we'll find out who he picks in this mock. Zach, what'd you do at 5 in the 7th?
Well, I also went with my guy for my mock draft and went with Dontavius Russell. I think he kind of fits the mold of what the Steelers were trying to get with Joshua Frazier last year, sex machine. I think he, compared to Frazier, who never was the guy at Alabama, we have another SEC guy in Russell. He's a 4-year starter there. He was a leader in the locker room. He was a leader off the field. He was a quieter guy from all accounts, but he led by example. He always was a no-nonsense type of, let's get this job done. He's going to work hard for you. He hasn't presented entirely a lot as a inside interior rusher, but the effort is constantly there to see him go, and you see him constantly working the hands. He has the natural leverage from being a 6'2", squatty build guy. He reminds you of like a traditional nose tackle. I think he would present an upgrade when it came to just overall talent than what they've been trying to work out, Daniel McCullers, and I think obviously it can amend the one apparent mishap pick last season from Joshua Frazier, who's now in the AAF. So I think having a guy like Russell in there really kind of rounds out that draft for them. I think it also gives them a high character guy that would be a very nice addition to that locker room.
All right. Well, I went in the 7th round with my favorite position. For anybody who hasn't been paying attention, that's linebackers. So I took Terrell Hanks, linebacker from New Mexico State, I think. New Mexico State. So I actually like this guy. I don't think he's elite, and I think his biggest issue is strength, but I think you can work on strength. I think he has really solid instincts, which I don't think is as easy to teach or can be taught, to be quite frank. I think he's a good tackler in space. I think he has the speed that you can use him in coverage without him being a tremendous liability. But, he's not all there yet, and he's still got some learning, and I think he has to – the concern is whether packing on strength, packing on some muscle might help or hurt the speed. So if he can get a little bit stronger and maintain – the way he plays, I like this kid as a potential fill-in and maybe even a find, maybe even a diamond in the rough late in the draft. What do you guys think? Ryan?
Like you said, 7th round. He could be a diamond in the rough guy, coming from a smaller school. You never know what you could find in 7th.
All right, Zach, tell me why I'm wrong.
I missed the name, Brian, so I apologize.
Terrell Hanks, tight end, New Mexico State. Not tight end, linebacker.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with the pick. I mean, again, 7th round, you could turn another Tyler Metkevich. I think at that point, that's his ceiling. Special team ace can potentially turn into more, and who knows? Gives you more depth, gives you more options, and competition always promotes the best in people when it comes to football. So I think you take him in the 7th round. There's really little risk in doing it at that point.
Yeah, I actually think his instincts are on par with Matakevich. I just think he's faster.
Yes.
And that gives him maybe a little more upside in my mind, but we'll see. So that's going to close it out for us. A nice, healthy mock draft, just steeped in reality and potential that we're certain is going to happen. Hopefully sarcasm comes across well in the pod, because I just want to reiterate, this is a scenario that we absolutely maybe look. I don't even anticipate the beginning of this, which is the Niners trading for their second pick to us. I know everybody's hot for that. I just don't think it's ever going to happen. But if it did, in this fantasy world of mock drafting, this is the insanity of mock drafts, hence all this craziness. So the idea, again, is to introduce as many potential prospects, people that might fit into the Steelers world or the Steelers scheme, give people some names to think about and do their own research on if they so choose. So I want to take a moment. Thank Ryan. Ryan, thank you for joining us. Tell everybody how they can follow you out in the interwebs of the world and what they need to do to stay in touch with you, man.
You can follow me on Twitter at Lippert32. Obviously, you can catch me on Steel City Underground as well as Blitzalytics. I write for them as well, so check me out on both of those.
All right. And Dr. Professor, football guru extraordinaire, tell them how they can find you if they don't already know.
All right, you can reach me at GZ Sports, SPRTS_ZM. You can find all my good stuff on there.
Absolutely. So I'm, again, Brian Roach, the host who doesn't like toast. And you can get me at Cannons Don't Thun on Twitter. You can find me in other places too. And if you do, I'm sorry. So that's going to wrap it up for us this time around. As I said, thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll do this again in a couple weeks. Where we'll try and be a little more realistic within scenarios than this one. I promise we will do another insanity before it gets to draft time. But to close it out, my name's Brian. Their names are Zach and Ryan. And as we always like to say, it's chaos out there, so be kind.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.